The fluorescent lights of Riverside Correctional Facility hummed their monotonous song as Officer Marcus Chen began his night shift. 5 years on the job had taught him one ironclad rule: never get involved. Keep your distance, do your time, and go home to forget the faces behind the bars. But rules, Marcus would soon learn, were made to be broken. It was a Tuesday when she arrived, Sofia Castellano, prisoner 847392. Marcus watched from the guard station as she was processed, her dark hair cascading over the orange jumpsuit, her green eyes scanning the facility with an intelligence that seemed out of place behind these walls. According to her file, she was convicted of embezzling $3.2 million from the tech company where she'd worked as chief information officer. The media had called her the Silicon Valley Siren, painting her as a femme fatale who'd used her beauty and brilliance to deceive everyone around her. "Don't even think about it," growled Officer Patterson, a 20-year veteran with a face like worn leather. "That one's poison. They always are when they look like that." Marcus nodded, but something in Sophia's eyes haunted him. Unlike the hardened criminals or the broken souls he usually supervised, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that suggested innocence, or perhaps just exceptional acting skills. According to her file, she was convicted of embezzling $3.2 million from the tech company where she'd worked as chief information officer. The media had called her the Silicon Valley Siren, painting her as a femme fatale who'd used her beauty and brilliance to deceive everyone around her. "Don't even think about it," growled Officer Patterson, a 20-year veteran with a face like worn leather. "That one's poison. They always are when they look like that." Marcus nodded, but something in Sophia's eyes haunted him. Unlike the hardened criminals or the broken souls he usually supervised, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that suggested innocence, or perhaps just exceptional acting skills. 3 weeks passed. Marcus maintained his professional distance, but he couldn't help noticing things. Sophia kept to herself, spent hours in the library, and never caused trouble. She was polite to the guards, careful around the other inmates, and seemed to exist in a bubble of determined solitude. It was during his rounds one evening that Marcus found her in the library, surrounded by legal textbooks, her face illuminated by the harsh overhead light. Tears streaked her cheeks, the first crack in her composed exterior he'd witnessed. "Lights out in 10 minutes, he said, his voice softer than intended. She looked up, quickly wiping her face. "I'm sorry, Officer Chen. I'll head back now." "You can have the 10 minutes. He paused, against every instinct telling him to walk away. "Rough day?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Is there any other kind in here?" She gestured to the books around her. "I'm trying to file an appeal. Turns out, being a CIO doesn't prepare you for understanding the criminal justice system." "You're handling your own appeal?" "My lawyer stopped returning my calls 6 months ago. Apparently, defending me isn't good for his career." She met his eyes directly. "I'm innocent, Officer Chen. I know everyone says that, but in my case, it's actually true." Marcus should have walked away. Should have cited protocol and ended the conversation. Instead, he found himself asking, "What happened?" Over the following weeks, during brief exchanges in the library, the recreation yard, and the cafeteria, Sophia told Marcus her story. She'd been the CIO of TechCore Solutions, a rising cybersecurity firm. She'd discovered irregularities in the company's financial records, money being siphoned off to offshore accounts. Before she could report it to the board, she'd been arrested. "Someone set me up perfectly," she explained during one of their conversations, her voice low so nearby inmates wouldn't hear. "They created a digital trail leading straight to me. Used my access codes, mimicked my authorization patterns. By the time I realized what was happening, federal agents were at my door." "Who would do that?" Marcus asked, though he knew he shouldn't be engaging like this. "I have my suspicions. David Reeves, our CFO, he had access to everything, knowledge of our systems, and a gambling problem I'd accidentally discovered. But I can't prove it. Every piece of evidence I try to gather gets blocked. My accounts are frozen, my reputation destroyed, and no one will listen to the disgraced CIO crying conspiracy." Marcus found himself believing her. Maybe it was naive. Maybe it was her eyes, which held none of the calculating cunning he'd learned to recognize in guilty prisoners. Or maybe, he thought with growing concern, He was just falling for a beautiful woman who was playing him perfectly. It happened gradually, then all at once. Marcus started looking forward to his shifts, finding reasons to patrol near the library during Sophia's study time. They talked about more than her case, about life, dreams, the world outside the prison walls. She told him about her childhood in Boston, her rise through the tech world, her love of classical music and terrible action movies. He shared stories about his family, his engineering degree he'd never used, his failed marriage that had left him cynical about love. "You're too smart to be a prison guard," Sophia said one evening. "And you're too kind to be a criminal," he replied. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither dared name. Then Sophia looked away. "Marcus." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "We can't. You know we can't." "I know." But he didn't move away. "I have 18 months left on my sentence. You could lose your job. Worse, you could face charges." "I know," he repeated, and this time he did step back. But the line had already been crossed in his heart. The discovery. Marcus began looking into Sophia's case in his off hours, knowing he was crossing into dangerous territory. He reached out to a friend from college, now a forensic accountant, and shared what Sophia had told him. The picture that emerged was troubling. "If what you're saying is accurate," his friend Tom said over beers one night, "then this woman got railroaded. But the people who did it were sophisticated. This level of digital manipulation would require insider knowledge and serious technical skills. Could she have done it herself? Created this elaborate cover story?" Tom shrugged. "Possible. But why? If she's as smart as you say, she'd know a story like this would be nearly impossible to prove. Better to take a plea deal, serve less time. The fact that she refused the deal and insisted on trial, then got the maximum sentence, that actually supports her version." Marcus's heart sank and soared simultaneously. If Sophia was truly innocent, she'd been suffering a grave injustice. But proving it seemed impossible. Then came the night that changed everything. The visitor. Marcus was reviewing security footage for an unrelated incident when he noticed something odd. A visitor had come to see Sophia 3 days earlier, David Reeves, the CFO she'd named as her prime suspect. Marcus hadn't been on duty that day, but the visitation log showed a 40-minute conversation. His stomach churned as he watched the silent footage. Sophia's body language was rigid, defensive. Reeves leaned forward, clearly agitated, his gestures aggressive. Then, near the end of the visit, he slid something across the table, a photograph. Sophia's face went white as she looked at it. Marcus found her in her cell during the next shift, staring at the wall. "You had a visitor," he said carefully. Her jaw tightened. "Yes." "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." But after a long pause, she continued, "He wanted me to stop filing appeals. Said some things, made some threats." "What kind of threats?" Sophia finally looked at him, and the fear in her eyes made his blood run cold. "He showed me a photo of my sister and her kids. Said accidents happen all the time, especially to families of people who can't let things go." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. "That's witness intimidation. If you report it." "With what evidence?" "The photo wasn't captured on camera, and it'll be my word against his. The word of a convicted felon against a respected CFO." Her voice cracked. "Marcus, I'm trapped. If I keep fighting for my freedom, he'll hurt my family. If I don't fight, I spend the next year and a half in here for a crime I didn't commit." Without thinking, Marcus reached through the bars and took her hand. "I won't let him hurt anyone. I promise you, Sophia, we'll find a way." It was the first time they'd touched. Electric and terrifying and absolutely forbidden. Marcus knew he was in over his head, but he couldn't walk away. He spent sleepless nights researching, planning, trying to find a legal path forward. But every avenue seemed blocked. Sophia's appeals were denied, her lawyer was useless, and reporting Reeves's threat without evidence would accomplish nothing. Then Tom called with interesting news. "I did some digging into David Reeves. Your instincts were right, guy's got serious financial problems. But here's the thing, he's started spending big recently. New car, vacation home, high-stakes poker games. Where's a CFO of a mid-sized tech company getting that kind of money?" "The money Sophia supposedly stole?" That'd be my guess. If we could trace his recent acquisitions back to TechCore's missing funds, we'd prove Sophia's theory, Marcus finished. Can you do that? Not legally. Not without subpoenas and warrants, which we won't get without probable cause, which we don't have because everyone thinks the case is solved. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. What if I could get you access to more information? About Reeves, about his movements? Marcus, whatever you're thinking. Just tell me what you'd need. There was a long silence. His financial records. Banking information, investment accounts. But buddy, if you're caught obtaining that illegally. I know the risks. The betrayal. What Marcus didn't know was that he was being watched. Officer Patterson had noticed the time Marcus spent near Sophia's cell, the lingering conversations, the way his eyes tracked her in the cafeteria. Patterson had seen it before. Good men destroyed by manipulative inmates who knew exactly which buttons to push. He made a call to the warden. 2 nights later, as Marcus was preparing to meet Tom with information he'd gathered on Reeves, information obtained through morally gray methods that could end his career, he was called into the warden's office. Officer Chen, we need to talk about your conduct. Marcus's blood turned to ice. It's come to my attention that you've been having inappropriate contact with inmate Castellano. Extended conversations, personal discussions beyond the scope of your duties. The warden leaned back, her expression disappointed. I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You're to have no contact with the inmate, and I'm recommending termination proceedings. If I could explain. There's nothing to explain. I've seen the security footage, Marcus. I know you've been helping her with her appeal, spending hours talking with her. Whatever you think is happening here, whatever she's told you, you need to understand that you've been manipulated. She's innocent, Marcus said, his voice shaking. David Reeves framed her, and he's threatening her family to keep her quiet. I have evidence. Evidence you obtained how? Through proper legal channels. The warden's expression hardened. Go home, Officer Chen. Don't make this worse than it already is. As Marcus was escorted out of the facility, he caught a glimpse of Sophia in the recreation yard. Their eyes met through the chain-link fence. He tried to communicate with his expression. I'm sorry. I tried. This isn't over. But the guard behind him kept him moving, and Sophia disappeared from view. The choice. Marcus sat in his apartment, suspended from his job, his career in ruins, and faced a choice. He could walk away, let the investigation run its course, hope for a minimal punishment. Sophia would serve her remaining sentence, and Marcus would eventually find another job, another life. Or he could finish what he'd started. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Officer Chen. I know what you were trying to do. Stop now, or Sophia's sister pays the price. You have 24 hours to destroy whatever evidence you think you have. Dr. Marcus stared at the message. Reeves knew. Which meant someone at the prison had tipped him off. Possibly Patterson, possibly someone else. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Sophia and her family were in danger, and Marcus was the only one who could help. He called Tom. I need you to do something that could get us both arrested. I'm listening. I have financial records showing Reeves's spending matches the timeline of the TechCore embezzlement. But I obtained them through, let's call them unauthorized means. If I send them to you, can you verify they're legitimate and get them to someone who can actually do something? Marcus, if this comes out. I know. But a woman's in prison for a crime she didn't commit, and her family's being threatened. I have to try. There was a pause. Send me everything you have. I know a federal investigator who owes me a favor. No promises, but I'll try. Marcus spent the next hour compiling everything. Sophia's case files, the evidence he'd gathered on Reeves, screenshots of the threatening text, his own documented observations of Reeves's visit to the prison. He sent it all to Tom, then sat back, feeling empty and strangely at peace. He'd done all he could. Now it was out of his hands. The next morning, Marcus received a call from Sophia. Somehow, she'd gotten access to a phone, probably through one of the more flexible guards who could be bribed for small favors. Marcus, what did you do? Her voice was terrified. Patterson told me you were fired, that you're being investigated. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen. I had to try, Sophia. And now we are both ruined. You've lost your career, I'm still in here, and Reeves is still free. What did any of this accomplish? Maybe nothing, Marcus admitted. Or maybe everything. I sent the evidence to someone who can actually help. It's a long shot, but you shouldn't have risked yourself for me. Her voice broke. I'm not worth it. Yes, you are. The words came easily, truthfully. Even if nothing comes of this, even if I never work in corrections again, meeting you, believing you, it reminded me that some things are worth fighting for. There was a long silence. Marcus, The line went dead. Whether someone cut her off or she'd simply run out of time, Marcus would never know. The interrogation. 2 days later, Marcus was contacted by the FBI. Special Agent Rivera sat across from him in an interrogation room, her expression unreadable. Officer Chen, you've put us in a difficult position. The evidence you provided was obtained illegally, which means most of it is inadmissible in court. Marcus's heart sank. So Reeves gets away with it. I didn't say that. Rivera pulled out a folder. What you gave us was enough to obtain legitimate warrants. We've been building a case against David Reeves for the past 48 hours. Turns out, the TechCore embezzlement wasn't his first rodeo, just his most ambitious. Once we started pulling threads, things unraveled quickly. So Sophia. Ms. Castellanos' conviction is being reviewed. If everything checks out, and I believe it will, she'll be released and fully exonerated. Rivera leaned forward. However, you're still facing charges for how you obtained that initial evidence. The DA hasn't decided whether to prosecute yet. I understand. Do you? Rivera's expression softened slightly. You threw away your career for an inmate you barely knew. Some people would call that noble. Others would call it foolish. What do you call it? Marcus thought about Sophia's eyes, the intelligence and integrity he'd seen there, the injustice of her imprisonment. Necessary. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood outside Riverside Correctional Facility as Sophia walked through the gates, a free woman. The DA had decided not to prosecute him, partly because of public pressure after the case became news, partly because his actions had exposed a larger pattern of corruption at TechCore that was now under federal investigation. Sophia spotted him and stopped, uncertainty crossing her face. You waited, she said. I said I wouldn't let them hurt you. I keep my promises. She walked slowly toward him, as if afraid he might disappear. Marcus, I don't know what to say. You sacrificed everything. Not everything. I can't work in corrections anymore, but Tom offered me a job at his firm. Turns out, investigating financial crimes is more interesting than I expected. He smiled. And I'm not sure I want to go back to prison work anyway. Too many bad memories. And some good ones? She asked hopefully. One exceptional one. They stood facing each other on the sidewalk, freed prisoners both, she from literal bars, he from the cage of cynicism and routine that had trapped him for years. Where do we go from here? Sophia asked. I don't know, Marcus admitted. You're rebuilding your life, I'm starting over in mine. Maybe we are both too damaged, too complicated. Maybe, she agreed. Or maybe, he continued, we've already been through the worst together. Maybe everything else will seem easy by comparison. Sophia stepped closer. I spent 18 months in prison thinking about two things, clearing my name, and the guard who believed me when no one else would. Just a guard doing the right thing. No, Marcus. You're so much more than that. She took his hand, the same way he'd taken hers through the bars all those weeks ago. You're the man who taught me that integrity still exists in this world. That not everyone can be bought or scared away. That some people actually follow through on their promises. Sophia. Let me finish. I don't know if this, whatever this is between us, can work in the real world. We met in the worst possible circumstances. You've seen me at my absolute lowest. Maybe when we are both back to normal life, we'll realize this was just proximity, just two people seeking comfort in an uncomfortable place. Or? Marcus prompted. Or maybe it's real. Maybe it's the kind of connection that only comes from being tested by fire and coming through intact. She squeezed his hand. Either way, I'd like to find out. If you would. Marcus felt the weight of the past months lifting, the risk, the fear, the uncertainty. All of it had led to this moment, standing in the sunlight with a woman who'd changed his life, facing an uncertain future together. "I would," he said simply. As they walked toward his car, neither noticed the dark sedan parked across the street. Inside, David Reeves watched them through narrowed eyes, his phone pressed to his ear. "They're together," he said quietly. "Both of them. The guard who ruined everything and the bitch who wouldn't stay quiet." He listened for a moment, then smiled coldly. "No, I understand. Yes, I can handle it. This time, I'll make sure neither of them can testify. This time, it'll look like an accident." He ended the call and started his engine, following Marcus's car at a safe distance. Sophia and Marcus drove through the city, talking and laughing, planning lunch at a restaurant she dreamed about for 18 months. They didn't see the sedan tailing them. Didn't notice when it sped up at the intersection, running the red light, heading straight for the driver's side of Marcus's car. Marcus glanced in his rearview mirror, saw the vehicle accelerating toward them, and had just enough time to shout, "Hold on," before the end. Or is it? Life can be a journey full of unexpected challenges. Every choice you make, every step you take, shapes not just your own destiny, but also the lives of those around you. This is a story about the obstacles you've faced, the struggles you've overcome, and the victories you've earned. Every challenge you've met has shown your courage and determination. Every fall has made you stronger, every obstacle has opened the door to a new opportunity. Sometimes you had to trust, sometimes you had to be patient, and sometimes you had to take risks just to make the right choice. This is your journey, this is your story. But remember, life is full of surprises. Every turn brings a new test. Every step teaches a new lesson. So, what obstacles will you overcome on your path? What victories are waiting for you? And which decisions will take you to the next chapter? This story isn't just about a life lived, it's about courage, patience, and determination. Every one of us can take lessons from your journey, applying them to our own struggles and opportunities. So, we have to ask, which step will you take next on this journey? Subscribe now and join us as we explore this captivating story together. Don't miss the next episodes, full of inspiration, challenges, and surprises.